Welcome back to BG3 Druid Angels, the honor mode run where Karlach and her nature-loving sisters Shadowheart and Lae'zel are on a journey to cleanse the land of alien aberrations. The story so far, Karlach met some like-minded ladies on a crashing Illithid starship and they set out on a journey together. They all became druids and allied themselves with the local druid grove against an army of rampaging goblins. In the process, they met another druid named Halsin, and now he is working together with them to solve their big problem, some squirming mind flayer tadpoles in their brains. Halsin says to go to Moonrise Towers, the home base of a cult worshipping these creepy crawlies, but unfortunately, the towers are in an area called the Shadow-Cursed Lands, and it might be more difficult to get there than it seems. And so, the team set out towards the Shadow-Cursed Lands, through the mountain pass, but along the way, Lae'zel wants to visit the nearby Githyanki Creche, since it is standard Gith protocol to use a machine called a Zaithis to remove Illithid tadpoles. And so, trusting the judgment of Lae'zel, Karlach decides to visit the Creche and see how it goes. On the road to Rosymorn Monastery, Karlach encounters a blue jay who asks her to beat up some asshole eagles, so naturally, she obliges. Outside the entrance, the group spots some Githyanki escorting a few absolute cultists inside. Karlach wisely keeps her mouth shut as the encounter quickly turns bloody when a cultist is killed trying to flee. They seal the door behind them with a magic lock, so Karlach looks for another way inside. Slipping through a busted window, they find a winery full of drunk kobolds. Karlach transforms into an owlbear and reduces the entire room to a sticky puddle of red liquid. Probably just wine. They find some sort of ceremonial weapon on a kobold corpse. Into the bag it goes. Upstairs, they're ambushed by Gramishkas, cat-like chaos gremlins with an allergy to magic. After dealing with them the same way as the kobolds, lots of smashing, they climbed to the roof and found the eagles mentioned by the blue jay. A few crushed bodies later, the blue jay flies in to offer his thanks by teaching them about a stash of treasure. Then, Karlach loots the nest and finds another ceremonial weapon. Deeper inside the ruins, they stumble upon a guardian of faith, no summoner to be found. Strange. But it has another ceremonial weapon at its feet. Since it can't move, they just hurl fireballs at it and pick up the newly available weapon. With all these ceremonial things in hand, they find a chamber with some plinths and put them down. The reward is a buff called the Morning Lord's Blessing and some sort of magical crest. No idea what it does yet, but feels important. Now it is finally time to pay the Gith a visit. Inside the Creche, Lae'zel takes point. Her people, her rules. She leads the group into the training room, where a Gith youth is being harassed by the Savarsh for failing at violence. Lae'zel accepts an invitation to give him a lesson. When he refuses to fight back, she delivers the Githyanki version of a lecture by killing him cleanly and without hesitation. Later, when Karlach asks her about it, Lae'zel explains her experiences as a youth at her own creche and how she killed more than a few of her classmates. They also find another slate about Orpheus on the boy's body, which Lae'zel explains while simultaneously cursing it as treasonous slander. At the hatchery, the party talks their way into getting the last unhatched Gith egg. Maybe if Lae'zel carries this thing around, it will teach her some maternal instincts. Maybe. Around this time, the party hits level 7, which means level 4 spells, particularly strong for druids. Karlach picks up Conjure Woodland Being, Lae'zel Ice Storm and Wall of Fire, and Shadowheart Blight and Conjure Minor Elemental. In the infirmary, Lae'zel finally finds what she has been searching for all this time, the Zaithis. Finally, she would be cleansed of this aberration in her brain. Karlach lets Lae'zel get first dibs in the chair, but something is wrong. As the machine lights up, Karlach connects to Lae'zel's mind and senses raw, agonizing pain. Karlach tries to use her own psionic energy to keep things under control, but fails, again and again. Until at the end, Karlach finds the opportunity to absorb the Zaithis' power for herself, and by the grace of a natural 20 Arcana check, succeeds. The machine explodes, the doctor goes hostile, and is quickly dispatched. In the aftermath, Karlach has a strange new power called Awakened, and Lae'zel has some drained stats, but nothing that a nearby tadpole won't fix. Furious that the doctor sabotaged her cleansing, Lae'zel urges Karlach to report the treachery to the Ketheric. Inside the Ketheric's chamber, they overhear her speaking with a mysterious higher-up, someone with even more authority than she has. He walks off deeper into the complex, and she locks the door behind him. When Lae'zel speaks to the Ketheric, she reveals that she is carrying the weapon the Githyanki are searching for, Shadowheart's magic D20. When the Ketheric fails to take it for herself, she has little choice but to let the party pass by and speak to the Inquisitor in person. In the chamber with the Inquisitor, a colossal image of Lakith herself appears to address Lae'zel and offers her ascension in exchange for one thing: cleansing the artifact, or astral prism as she calls it, by killing its occupant. So they agree and go inside. Inside the astral prism, Lae'zel isn't allowed to approach, which means Karlach has to go on ahead alone. Now she is face to face with her dream visitor. Karlach hears the dream visitor out and decides to spare her. When Karlach goes back and tells Lae'zel what happened, she decides to show her directly using the tadpole. The Dream Visitor claimed Vlaakith is a fraud and doesn't have any of the godlike power she claims to. Lae'zel is not convinced. Nothing about this situation is adding up for her. But the Dream Visitor warned Karlach that the Inquisitor would be hostile, so she got ready just in case. Upon exiting the Astral Prism, turns out, yes, he is very hostile. The Inquisitor and his band of Githyanki warriors immediately tried to destroy the party with psionic magic and floating purple swords. Karlach came in as an owlbear, but she doesn't stay in that form for long. The others decide to just play it safe and use magic to win the day. Shadowheart lays a Create Water on the Inquisitor and a few of his friends, and between her and Lae'zel, they have enough ice and lightning magic to pull through. Now, Lae'zel is a traitor to her people. But on the bright side, she has 100 approval with Karlach now. I don't think I've ever even seen that before, so that's neat. While looting the room, they find a hidden path by smacking a statue with a stick. This is where the blood of Lathander is kept, a mace with radiant power and perpetual light. They use the crest they found earlier to get it without any trouble, and Shadowheart decides to keep it handy. On the way out of the Creche, the Ketheric is waiting to ambush them. It was a bit of a messy fight thanks to the fear spell the Ketheric used, but no deaths, other than on the Githyanki side of course. The whole Creche is hostile now, so the team go around the place room by room taking them out. First up is the Merchant. This fight was a lot messier than the others so far. It actually got pretty close to a game over, but at least the Merchant dropped some sick loot, such as the Knife of the Undermountain King and the Gloves of Dexterity. There are a few rooms left to clean up. First, the training room with the Savarsh. Next, the entrance corridor. Then, the infirmary, and finally, the hatchery. After cleaning up all of these groups, the team sell their wares to Esther out in the mountain pass and get ready to press on into the next area. Unfortunately, the road is blocked by a wall of undead. The team leap into battle with them, and a combination of wild shapes and moonbeams take them all out, though there is some mild nausea along the way. That night, as they rest on the edge of the shadow-cursed lands, they are interrupted by yet another Githyanki interloper. This is Kithrak Voss, the same Githyanki who was riding the Red Dragon back in the first video. This time, though, he isn't here to kill. He is here to convince Lae'zel to join his cause. Voss is actually trying to overthrow the Lich Queen Vlaakith, and he knows the occupant of the Astral Prism can do it. At first, she isn't hearing any of his treasonous babble, but with recent events such as the Zaith'isk and the Inquisitor battle, she is starting to feel a little bit of doubt. Crossing into the shadow-cursed lands, Karlach meets a group of goblins waiting to be guided to Moonrise Towers. She ingratiates herself into their group and is instructed to use a lyre she picked up from Inthara back in the goblin camp. Her playing is completely awful, and the Drider that rolls up is definitely not pleased, but he invites her to join them all the same. The team proceed down the road when suddenly they are ambushed by a group of Harpers. Taking this opportunity to snatch the magic lantern from the Drider, the team side with the Harpers and turn on the cultist convoy. Good thing Karlach was already in owlbear form. This fight went much better than one would expect, considering Karnas here loves to give himself Sanctuary and counterattacks with psychic damage. But Sanctuary doesn't stop like any of the nasty druid tricks, including crushing flight from Karlach or Moonbeam from Lae'zel. Shadowheart's ice methods could even get a little damage in. The battle was over quickly with minimal casualties. The Harpers take up the moon lantern the Drider dropped and take it to a nearby enclave, which they are kind enough to invite the team to visit. On the way there, they battle some nasties hiding in the shadows, some weird-looking gremlins called measles, and some shadow-cursed dogs. Eventually, they make their way to the last bastion of light in this cursed land, the Last Light Inn. When they arrive, a rather famous character from games long past shows up to interrogate them, Jaheira. Karlach immediately fangirls over her, like, immediately. When Maul comes over to vouch for Karlach, Jaheira relents and lets them enter the inn. The quartermaster lets them use her shop, and Karlach got a decent gear upgrade there. Then, Karlach spots Dammon as well, and finally gets another tune-up for her Infernal Heart. Now, she can finally touch another person without roasting them. Dammon makes some subtle suggestions, but then kinda just gives up. Well, Karlach is in a relationship with Shadowheart anyway, so no big deal. Karlach trades some more Infernal Metal for an armor set and the masks from Grimforge for a set of bombs. Then, they head inside. One strange interaction happens when Karlach speaks with Mattis, the Tiefling child. At this point, he makes a point of calling out that he recognizes Karlach from her time in the Hells as a combatant and that she was famous. Karlach is, of course, flattered, and has a nice chat with him. But the thing is, does he not remember when he scammed her in the Grove or something? Why did he wait to bring up her fame until now? Just a weird oversight when playing as Avatar Karlach, I guess. Karlach takes Jaheira up on her offer for a drink and continues to fangirl over her. She doesn't hesitate to drink the clearly tainted beverage, which Lae'zel and Shadowheart are none too pleased with. But the fact that this drink is spiked with truth serum ultimately doesn't matter because Karlach was always going to be truthful here. Jaheira explains about the big threat in this land, Ketheric Thorm. He is a fearsome general from generations past who was thought to be dead and buried. Jaheira interred him in the mausoleum herself. But he is back, and now he is invincible. Jaheira tasks Karlach with infiltrating Moonrise Towers and finding Ketheric's weakness so they can finally put him to rest, for good this time. They also find out about Isabel, a cleric of Selûne who is responsible for keeping this inn protected from the curse, and she can offer protection to the party as well. But there are plenty more characters to talk to downstairs, and next up on the docket is Raphael, sitting and playing a board game with Maul. Usually, you can choose to help Maul cheat and win this game by using a sleight of hand check, but I chose to use Karlach's unique interaction here. So, Maul loses the game and slinks off, while Raphael gloats over his new prize. Karlach has no love for devils, and Raphael is particularly irritating to her. She has several unique dialogue options here that other avatars don't. After Raphael blips out of there, the next person to visit is Barkus Root, who at some point made the move from camp to here. He is still going on about saving his friend Wulbren from the cult, and Karlach is still on the hook to get it done. Patience, little man. Some of the tieflings on the first floor are crying over their missing friends. Now that they mention it... It turns out Zevlor completely dropped the ball and got almost all of his group either killed or captured by the Absolute Cult. The ones that survived either made it here to Last Light or are trapped in Moonrise Towers. Alfira here even mentions that amateur illusionist Roland managed to rescue the children at the cost of his brother and sister. Guess we have another group of victims to rescue. In the next room we find a group of flaming fists and the lady we rescued back in Joaquin's Rest, Counselor Flora. She basically reiterates that Duke Ravengard is in Moonrise Towers. Yeah, we know, who isn't at this point? But then she says something that piques Karlach's interest. There is a new lord in town back in the BG, Lord Gortash. Now that is a name she's familiar with, a name that opens up some pretty deep wounds. But let's leave that revenge story aside for the next video, shall we? There is a man singing a song in bed here. Honestly, this is the first time I sat and listened to his song, and not gonna lie, he has a decent voice.
We see what we see and do just what we please, together waiting for the sun.
Right here.
He is in some sort of spiritual coma or something, and we have no idea how to wake him up. For some reason, Karlach got the uncanny desire to go talk to Big Bear Halsin and see what he's been up to. So after a little chat with Halsin, he mentions a name, Thaniel. Weird, that singing man also said the name Thaniel. Putting two and two together, Halsin rushes over to Last Light to investigate. Now we have some direction, sorta. A memo he was carrying does mention a healing house somewhere in the Shadowlands though. Guess we will have to investigate that at some point. Heading upstairs, Karlach speaks to the person responsible for keeping this place together, Cleric Isabel. She blesses the team with some protection against the Shadow Curse, and even gives them a moon lantern to protect against the worst part near the towers. Then, out of nowhere, some guy who has never been seen or mentioned up to this point waltzes in and acts like he owns the place. He also has some really ratty wings that are very uncool. It turns out he is here to kidnap Isabel and take her to Ketheric at Moonrise Towers. Well, Karlach has no intention of letting this weirdo take her away. And so, a battle begins. Marcus isn't so tough on his own, he just has a big stick really. But he summons a fleet of winged horrors and commands them to focus fire on Isabel. While some mysterious female voice repeats the same voice lines over and over every few seconds, the team starts beating up Marcus. He is defeated pretty quickly and everything is looking good, just some minions left to fight. A few winged horrors come into the room and start hitting Isabel. I think this is the wrong script. This is probably from another video. Yeah, let me look around for a second. Here it is. Sorry about that. Here we go. Let me try that again. Starting out, Lae'zel yeets a winged horror over the balcony, removing him from being a threat for a while. Shadowheart makes sure to relocate Marcus out to the balcony to get him away from a certain vulnerable lady. Then, she pops a moonbeam on his face to try to maximize damage. Karlach goes straight to fighting the winged horrors first. She has a feeling those might be a bigger threat than Marcus. Marcus uses an area attack, but somehow misses Isabel. For some reason, he can't find her. Wonder where she went. Lae'zel has already used her action, but goes bird mode just in case. Then Isabel appears like out of nowhere and attacks Marcus. That's weird. After a round of fighting from summons and harpers and whatnot, Isabel is pretty much unharmed. Karlach smashes the horrors in the room with her, then Shadowheart pulls a Lae'zel and yeets Marcus off the roof to take him out of the picture. Guess those wings really are just for show, huh? Lae'zel follows him down and takes out the horror first with some pecks. Isabel is now totally safe in her room, so she can be pretty much ignored for now. Some more fighting and the horrors in the main room are soundly defeated by the likes of Halsin and Jaheira. The team starts gathering downstairs where Marcus was tossed. At this point, he is all alone against a whole gaggle of colorful characters, so it is only a matter of time before he is defeated and the battle ends with Isabel none the worse for wear. After the battle, that irritating voice just keeps going over and over again, so Karlach searches for the source of it. It turns out it was coming from the moon lantern that Isabel gave them before the battle. Upon examining it, it turns out a pixie is inside the lantern and is asking for help. Karlach is quick to help her out in exchange for some protection from the curse. The pixie has a pretty quick change of attitude upon getting out, but she gives what she promised, perfect protection. Now, the shadow curse is completely ineffective. What more could a dingus want? The tiefling children are making a ruckus about something, so when Karlach approaches, she finds out Maul was kidnapped during the scuffle. Add her to the list, I guess. Upstairs, Jaheira is checking up on Isabel, but she's fine. We don't learn a whole lot of new information, so just moving on, I guess. The team start roaming the shadow-cursed lands looking for things to fight. First, there is a group of nasties under the inn skulking about. A daylight spell from Shadowheart makes their attacks much less effective, so they go down pretty quickly. Next, some birds who think they can leave a trap and surprise passersby. Well, good thing Karlach is running an elixir of vigilance. She does some smashy and wipes them out pretty quickly. There are some groups of plant monsters who also try to ambush people, but some smashing from Karlach, I think you get it. Finally, something interesting, there is this guy hanging about in the shadow-cursed lands with his pet albino raven. He is trying to use a Speak with Dead spell on some lady, and he enlists Karlach's help. It turns out she is responsible for the death of some people a long time ago, and this guy wants justice on their behalf. So Karlach is sent on a schlep to pick up evidence of her crimes at the nearby pub. We will check back in on this quest later. The raven is a total dick, by the way.
Everyone hates you. You think the creatures of the realm owe you something just because you never shut up. They whisper about you, you know. Call you stupid and ignorant. They wish you were dead.
The team stumble upon a house in the region, and while investigating it, see a kid who is trying to hide while invisible. Well, Karlach's steampunk eye sees right through that nonsense. Upon speaking to him, her druid senses are tingling, and she seems to think this kid is more than he appears, but he insists upon playing with her. So after a little bit of back and forth, she gives in and offers to play his game. At first, he tries to go invisible and go hide again. It is not very effective. Then, he ups the stakes by summoning his mummy and daddy to try and hunt her down while playing the game. Once again, he tries to go invisible, but Karlach's eye spots him. Since Lae'zel is better at getting around, she is sent to win the game while Karlach and company hide from mummy and daddy. Not long after, when Oliver reaches his hiding spot, Lae'zel is ready and waiting to catch him and end this game. Oliver doesn't seem to like losing very much, but he gives them a reward anyway and then goes back to playing by himself. Across a chasm from Oliver's house, there's another ambush full of plant monsters. This one has a big boss, the Shambling Mound. But for a party of druids with level 4 spells, this is a pretty easy battle. From the safety of the other side of the chasm, they used Wall of Fire and Moonbeam to wipe out the entire enemy force and were never in danger at any point. And the reward? Level 8. At this level, everybody gets another feat, and this one is kind of obvious. They all take Alert. Alert is just too useful to pass up in honor mode. Going first is always best. They got some new spells as well, but nothing too special. Shadowheart does take Polymorph. Let's see if she puts that to good use. One last new addition is a new Wild Shape in the form of the saber-toothed tiger. Up till now, everybody has gotten an upgrade at least once except Shadowheart, so I think she deserves something new. Lae'zel could probably use the upgrade more at this point since the Raven is starting to lose its luster, but she can wait a little bit longer. Lae'zel is perfectly capable of doing great stuff in caster mode anyway, especially with Falara Luve's Shriek to increase damage. So Shadowheart switches from Spider to Tiger. This should be a nice change of pace. One last battle on this side of the Shadowcurse lands, the team run into Roland being attacked by some enforcers from the Magician's Alliance. Good chance for Shadowheart to test her new saber teeth on, so she wipes them out quickly. Roland throws a fit about how he's being blackballed from even smaller venues and runs back to the inn. Upon crossing the river towards Moonrise Towers, the team find themselves in a toll house. There are some strange jangling noises upstairs, so Karlach goes up to investigate, only to be threatened by some woman? Creature? She is demanding gold. Well darn, it just so happens that not moments ago, the team sent their gold to camp for safekeeping. Not a coin left. What unfortunate timing. When Karlach says she has no money to give, this unusual creature goes hostile. For this battle, there are a bunch of skulls floating about the area, and it turns out they are the real meat of this fight. Defeating them effectively means winning the whole thing, and they go down pretty easily to a couple owlbear claws. Shadowheart is unfortunately in the blast zone when the boss uses her automatic counterattack when a skull is defeated. This results in Shadowheart turning into solid gold for several turns, and that basically means she is out of the fight. But the boss doesn't care all that much and keeps hitting her anyway, so at least she is making for a pretty useful tank. Once all the skulls were down, Lae'zel swooped in from on high and dealt the finishing blow to our naked undead foe. After looting the Tollhouse for all the gold left behind, Karlach spotted some undead gathered around a statue in the courtyard. This was a quick battle with no damage taken at all, so they just moved on to the next location, the Masons Guild next door. After finding a secret door in the basement, they fight some shadows and get some really nifty rewards in the process. 1. A scroll of knock. There is a door coming up that is just asking for this one. And 2. The Hat of Arcane Acuity, given to Lae'zel since she has the most spell sword fighting style of the group. There is also a particular battle coming up where this will do some real work. Finally, the team make their way down to Moonrise Towers. They are greeted by some cultist guards at the door, so Karlach goes into spy mode and plays along with them. After safely getting inside, she meets a bugbear merchant by the name of Lan Tarv. This guy was waiting for Karlach to show up as he has a few soul coins on his person, courtesy of a devil by the name of Flo. Flo is an old frenemy of Karlach's and left this little gift for her as a sort of elaborate troll attempt. Karlach has to sit and listen to some really depressing stories about the souls inside the coins. Day thoroughly ruined, she takes her prize, then does some shopping. Of note is the blood-obsessed Araja Blodra in a nearby storeroom. She offers to take a little blood from all the members in the party in exchange for some money and some awful potions. But there is more to this story as well, so we will be checking back in on her in the next video. A quick visit to the kitchen leads to seeing the cook instructing her Gnoll assistants on how to properly stir the stew. It turns out this chef is actually using her tadpole power to forcibly command the Gnolls to do her bidding, essentially slavery. Karlach is not down with this, so she turns the tables and snips her connection with her own illithid abilities. Once freed from her control, the Gnolls turn to Karlach with a hungry look in their eyes, but Karlach growls right back at them and they back down. Now, Karlach enters the throne room and sees the man of the hour, Ketheric Thorm. He is currently busy hearing the excuses of some goblins who failed to get adequate pictures of Spider-Man. When he determines the punishment for their failure is death, one of the goblins shoots her shot and tries to kill him with a halberd. It goes poorly. As for the rest of the goblins, Ketheric decides Karlach should be responsible for their fates and takes his lackey upstairs. Karlach isn't much for executions, so she lets the goblins go unharmed, and so they wander off, never to be seen again. Upstairs, Karlach spoke to Zarel, the person in charge under Ketheric right now. She wants to see how the goblins were tortured and killed, and is furious to see them walk away into the sunset, but Karlach managed to convince her it's all good. Zarel tells Karlach about the task at hand. Ketheric's right-hand man Balthazar went off to retrieve something important and they lost contact. Given a little bit of free reign to explore, the team visited Balthazar's chambers and hoo boy is this a nightmare realm. A secret puzzle involves using the excised heart of a corpse as a key. What a freak. Getting out of that place as soon as humanly possible, Karlach and company visit Ketheric's private chambers. There, they meet an undead dog who sniffs the Selûnite magic that Isabel left on them. She seems pretty nostalgic for the scent. What could they be hinting at here? She seems pretty chill with letting everybody run around, so a little bit of looting and they move on. The next stop is the lowest level in the towers, the prison in the basement. Down here, there are several guards, and finally they spot the kidnapped tieflings and gnomes. Knowing it would be difficult to get them out safely with all these guards around, the team go to work picking them off one by one. After removing all the obstacles, Karlach finally speaks to the prisoners and learns that the gnomes, led by Wulbren himself, have a plan to escape. Karlach retrieves his hammer and gives it to him, and he uses it to bust down the back wall and the wall of the cell containing the tieflings. Then they hop in a boat and Karlach shows them to Last Light Inn. In Last Light, after a little bit of TSA screening for contraband, the newly freed tieflings and gnomes run upstairs to join their loved ones. Alfira gives quite a haul of rewards when she is reunited with her girlfriend Lacrissa, and Roland is still being a bit salty even when he sees his brother and sister are okay, but in the end he apologizes for his attitude and thanks Karlach properly. Barkis is a little slow on the uptake, but when he hears Wulbren is back he quickly runs to see him, except Wulbren appears to have absolutely no love for Barkis. Definitely a one-sided relationship here. Barkis denies it, but Karlach sees just how callous Wulbren is being. Once everybody is safe and sound, Karlach takes her new rewards back to camp and settles in for the night. That night, Lae'zel, with her 100 approval, decides that means they must be a couple now. Karlach is understandably confused, as they have had no romantic encounters at all thus far. Since Karlach isn't the type to cheat, especially with her actual romantic partner sleeping like 2 feet away, she rebuffs Lae'zel, and that is the end of that. The next day, Karlach sets out to explore the rest of Reithwin Town while searching for Balthazar. The first stop is the town square statue, which has some conspicuous buttons on the sides. After pressing them in the right order, they reveal a secret cloister for Sharan worship, and the statues within offer a trial of sorts. Passing some saving throws and mental stats leads to a day-long buff, +5 to that stat. So Karlach goes through and grabs them all, netting a +5 bonus to Charisma, Wisdom, and finally, Intelligence. These will come in handy. Karlach finds the pub that one guy back in the Shadowed Battlefield directed her towards, and sees a bloated monstrosity tending bar there. She listens to his request, that she drink his drink and sing some songs, keep him entertained. But this drink is mighty suspicious, so she decides to use some clever sleight of hand tricks to dispose of it without him noticing. First drink, successfully faked, and she sings the song of discovering Grimforge in the Underdark. The big undead thing is thoroughly impressed with this story, so he answers a question about the nature of the curse, then asks her to go another round. Next drink, successfully faked, and she sings the song of defeating the Inquisitor of Vlaakith in the Githyanki Creche. Once again impressed, he answers another question about the nature of the curse, and passes yet another drink to Karlach. Third drink, oh. The bartender catches her this time, and he is none too pleased to see she has been wasting perfectly good drink. Battle begins. Thizabald here has straight up immunity to physical damage, so wild shapes aren't going to cut it here. It's time for a magic party. Shadowheart drops the water to make this dude weak to ice and lightning, 2 elements that the team have plenty of access to. And all 3 of them use haste potions to take as much advantage of each turn as they can. Ice Storm and Call Lightning cause a lot of damage, though this guy has tons of HP, so he can take quite a few hits. When he gets his first turn, he tries to chase after the nearest person, but thanks to the sheet of ice at his feet, he slips and falls and loses his turn. That gives everybody even more time to take him down before he can do any damage, and it was more than enough. In the second round, Thizabald is blasted with more lightning and goes down. All that remains are some pathetic zombie minions who are no issue whatsoever. Karlach searches the pub and finds the evidence she was tasked with retrieving, a ledger containing an account of the events written in the accused's own hand. Taking this evidence back to the quest giver, he uses another Speak with Dead spell to channel her essence through himself so she can be put on trial with Karlach as judge. But this guy probably should have looked for a less good aligned judge if he wanted this lady to be punished, because Karlach is very weak to sob stories and forgives her. Furious that she didn't make the right judgment, he goes hostile together with his raven buddy, but they stood no chance against Fangs and Claws. Back in Reithwin Town, the team run into a familiar face in the darkness, Arabella, the tiefling child they rescued from crazy druid Kalga and her snake. Seems she's got some new magical powers, very druid-like powers. Well, she's looking for her parents, who have gone missing in the shadows. She asks to stay at camp while the party looks for her parents. It doesn't take long to find them. They're both lying dead, being tended by a delusional sister at the House of Healing. Bummer. In the surgery theater in the House of Healing, Karlach encounters a crazed undead doctor and his disciples. When she approaches, she listens to his ramblings, clearly derived from extreme Shar worship. He insists that only in darkness can one find peace, and that means removing one's eyes, among other things. When he suggests letting the sisters practice their technique on Karlach, she makes a few clever suggestions, that their skill is lacking, and the best way to practice would be on himself. Somehow, he agrees with this idea and is brutally stabbed to death. The sisters scatter and leave the House of Healing clear to explore freely, and Karlach discovers a battered lute on his body. Maybe this can help with the flaming fist in a coma back at Lastlight. There were some other random encounters, but the most notable one was a group of Githyanki ambushers waiting at the road to Baldur's Gate. The little warning device Kithrak Voss left helped the team get the jump on them, so Karlach jumped on them. Right. So these Gith are pretty tough usually, but with a surprise round and strong owlbear swipes and jugular strikes from Shadowheart, the leader dropped fast. With her out of the way, the rest were no trouble at all. Honestly, the synergy between owlbear Crushing Flight and saber-toothed tiger Jugular Strike is very impressive. Since Jugular Strike does basically double damage against prone targets, it makes things die very quickly. While exploring, the team cleared out an area filled with zombies, then a pit filled with oozes, and finally went to a fishing lodge on the beach to wipe out some Kuatoa. After that battle, they leveled up to level 9, but decided to speak to Raphael, who was waiting nearby first. Raphael gave some cryptic warnings about something scary waiting inside the next area. Karlach, as usual, is just sick of every word coming out of his mouth. She has absolutely no patience for devils and their schemes. They aren't going in there right this second anyway, so thanks for the heads up, Raphael. Maybe that will be good to remember later. At level 9, druids gain access to their 5th level spells. None of these are super notable, but Karlach decided to pick up Insect Plague. Lae'zel doesn't have any summons yet, so she took Conjure Elemental. And Shadowheart took Wall of Stone, though not sure if that one will see any use. At this point, basically every encounter on the map of the Shadowcursed lands has been resolved, so it's time to clean up some lingering quests. Most notably, the resolution of the Shadow Curse itself. Halsin has been waiting patiently at Last Light with the comatose Flaming Fist Art Cullig for some time now, and the team recently acquired the key to proceeding with that quest. When they went back and played the loot they found, Art woke up and immediately recognized Halsin. It seems he really got to know Thaniel well in his time in the Shadowfell and knew to expect Halsin when he awoke. He gave an important clue to Halsin on how to locate Thaniel in the Shadowfell, so they set out for a nearby lakeshore to begin the rescue operation. While Halsin decided to go into the portal by himself, he left everybody else behind to keep things safe. So many monsters came out of nowhere that you can't even count them all. Using some trap spells to keep a lot of them under control, Shadowheart left a darkness patch on the portal to protect it from direct attacks. Then, they threw Karlach around to smash everybody one group at a time. After the battle, Halsin brought the limp body of Thaniel out of the Shadowfell, but something's wrong. He is incomplete somehow. That's when Karlach remembered a certain cheeky young boy out in the shadows that bore an uncanny resemblance. So, next stop, Oliver's house. When Karlach mentioned the name Thaniel to Oliver, he got quite upset and went off through a portal to another place, so the team went after him. And that starts another big battle, but this one has some interesting rules. Oliver is behind a barrier of necrotic energy and he can't be harmed, and hitting the barrier directly does massive damage back in return. Instead, defeating Oliver's minions is the key, as each one of them that is defeated hurts the barrier for 10 HP. Oliver likes to spawn a group of 5 weak shadow clones every turn, so finding a way to wipe them out is the fastest way to victory. But Oliver also drops a puddle of necrotic damage on the first clone defeated every round, so some strategy is required to keep party members out of that. Using summons and area attacks, the team managed to defeat the clones quickly and efficiently without taking too much damage. After the last little bit of damage is dealt to the barrier, Oliver makes his case about why he doesn't want to rejoin with Thaniel. It seems he feels like he has been tainted too much by the curse, but it is quite simple to convince him, as all he really wants is a friend. Back in camp, Thaniel is feeling fine again, and he says the final obstacle to healing the land of the curse is the one who started it to begin with. Ketheric Thorm must die. And now for something completely different. Karlach goes to visit her auntie for a quick fix of elixirs when she decides to muster up the courage to ask what happened to that young girl Mayrina like a month ago. Ethel is very suspicious in her response. Karlach's hero senses are tingling out of control now, so she does a little investigating, and in doing so, realizes the fireplace is an illusion with a secret behind it, and when she tries to step inside, combat. The team hold back a bit since they somehow know that she would just teleport away at the beginning of the second round, so once she does, they go back behind the fireplace and find a hag's lair inside, filled with nightmares and horrors galore. After finding her way past a very scared wooden door, Karlach and team notice some people wearing suspicious-looking masks blocking the way. Channeling her inner secret agent, she decides to take a more stealthy approach and use some masks to disguise the team. However, she knows better than to just stick a random mask on her face that a hag left on a table for her to find, so everybody uses protection from good and evil as a defensive measure. It works like a charm. Using the masks, the team are able to walk right past all the guards, and they also are able to see that all of the traps in the tunnels are illusions. Very convenient. So they make their way to the bottom where they find Mayrina in a cage. For this battle, Karlach goes into owlbear form and Shadowheart Tiger. Lae'zel stays in caster mode to play backup. Karlach jumps on top of Auntie and she summons all the guards from earlier into the battle. Then Auntie Ethel sets the cage with Mayrina on fire. Karlach goes into full damage mode on Auntie while Lae'zel tosses a bottle of water to put out the fire. Shadowheart also leaps down to get a smack on Auntie. Auntie Ethel tries to trick them by splitting into a bunch of illusory clones, but she forgot that owlbears have an AoE leap attack, I guess. Finding the real Auntie easily, Karlach keeps up the pressure. Lae'zel takes out some of the clones with a big ice storm as well. The battle rages on as Shadowheart takes down the guards and Karlach focuses fire on Auntie Ethel. When Ethel is very close to death, she decides to call a timeout and approaches Lae'zel, as she is the only one available who can speak. But Lae'zel is not feeling particularly merciful at the moment, and no promises of power from a hag would be enough to sway her. So the battle continues, and Karlach finishes the job with a powerful strike from her bear claws. At the end, Mayrina is very upset that her big plan to resurrect her husband fell apart. But maybe she should have tried going to Withers instead of a hag. 2 of the guards survived the battle. One seems thoroughly insane as he keeps insisting Auntie is just sleeping, but the other managed to keep her wits. Maybe we will run into her again later. Outside, the team sees Mayrina again. Karlach pulls out a wand she found inside the hag's lair and determines it's meant to bring Mayrina's husband back. Except, it brings him back as a mindless zombie. So Mayrina walks off with her zombie husband shambling towards Baldur's Gate. Definitely, there will be more to this story once we get to the city. With that distraction out of the way, everybody returns to the Shadowlands and the only area they haven't explored yet, the Thorm family mausoleum. They go in through the back and find a platform that goes down into an area with stonework suspiciously similar to Grimforge. At the bottom, Shadowheart immediately recognizes this place as the Gauntlet of Shar, an infamous training ground for Dark Justiciars in the Sharan faith. Knowing this is her deal, Karlach lets Shadowheart take the lead, but it doesn't take long for her to mess up and trigger a deadly trap. Using a ring that protects against being blinded, Shadowheart uses Misty Step to get to where she needs to go and disables the trap, allowing the team to move forward. Not long after, they run into a group of skeletons with a particularly foul mouth, and then some shades of Dark Justiciars start appearing out of dark portals and attacking them. They take them down easily enough, then move into the next room, and the exact situation happens again. But this time, Karlach and Shadowheart have no more Wild Shape charges. Whoopsie, good thing Lae'zel can still transform. Flying around as a raven helps a lot with clearing out the portals, while Karlach and Shadowheart use magic to beat the enemies. After the battle, the puppet master behind all the skeletons finally shows his face, Ketheric Thorm's right-hand man, Balthazar the Necromancer. He tasks them with finding the relic that Ketheric is after, somewhere in the Gauntlet, essentially passing his work on to them. For now, Karlach decides to play nice and keep in this guy's good graces, at least until she can identify what it is they're looking for down here. Using that handy-dandy scroll of knock found like 20 minutes ago, Karlach opens a very tough DC locked door and finds a super good ring. Now, this ring enables a powerful build that has been sort of sitting in the chest this whole time incomplete, but now it finally works. Since Druid doesn't have any native radiant damage other than Moonbeam, all of the radiant damage enabling effects don't really work. Moonbeam doesn't work because it doesn't count as a damage source coming from the player. So finally, with this Callous Glow Ring, Druid can do native radiant damage, and this enables all sorts of shenanigans, using the Luminous Armor, the Coruscation Ring, the Gloves of the Belligerent Sky, and the Boots of Stormy Clamor. Suddenly, Shadowheart has a very powerful build out of nowhere, thanks to this one little trinket. Now, both Shadowheart and Lae'zel have powerful tricks they can make use of while in caster mode, while Karlach is mostly still living that owlbear life. Owlbear is just too strong to pass up. By the way, thanks to the Callous Glow Ring and Sunbeam from the Blood of Lathander, which I totally forgot that I had, I was able to finally destroy the Necromancy of Thay. Bet nobody remembered I left that little quest dangling, did they? Exploring the Gauntlet of Shar, Shadowheart starts doing the trials. She insists on doing them all alone, so Karlach and Lae'zel patiently wait outside each trial room. The Soft Step trial is a test of stealth, and Shadowheart is not great at stealth. She gets caught again, and again, and again, and again. But since there is no real penalty to being caught, she just tries again until she finally gets the key in hand and makes it to the locked door at the end, finishing the trial. Karlach and Lae'zel wake up from their nap and follow Shadowheart next door to the next one. Next is the Self-Same trial. This one requires a Sharan to prove their prowess in combat against themselves. So Shadowheart begins the trial and sneaks up to the top, but fails the perception roll to see her foe. Assuming it must be in the general vicinity of the teleporty thingy, she uses Create Water to drag it out of hiding and goes to work. Clone Shadowheart goes down surprisingly easily though, since it lost a turn to Surprise, so some quick lightning magic does the job. Moving along to the next area, the team go down the stairs to the next level below. The final trial is the Faith Leap trial. For this one, Shadowheart borrows a special ring that Lae'zel is holding onto. the Eversight Ring, as well as the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. Using these, Shadowheart is able to cross the area with several casts of Misty Step, ignoring the darkness that would normally prevent such a strategy. The rewards for each of these trials were baubles used to gain access to an elevator deeper in the gauntlet, but they aren't done collecting things just yet. Next door to the Faith Leap trial is the Silent Library, and this room is a multi-tiered area filled with Dark Justiciar shadows, as well as a portal that both summons more dudes, as well as casts a giant area of silence around it. So all three of our girls go into Wild Shape before entering the room and go to work clawing and pecking these shades to death. It should come as no surprise that Karlach does the most work here, but Shadowheart holds her own as Saber-Toothed Tiger can actually output a lot of damage, but Raven is woefully lacking these days. Hopefully she gets a replacement soon. After clearing this room out, Shadowheart answers the riddle of the night: what can silence the night song? The answer? A tome called the Night Singer, found on a nearby shelf. The reward is a very important looking spear called the Spear of Night, which Shadowheart carries with her, as well as some Dark Justiciar equipment that are going straight to vendor. There is just one item left to find in the Gauntlet of Shar, one more of those little purple baubles needed to proceed, so the team head to the one place they haven't checked yet. On the way there, they see a suspicious looking displacer beast patrolling the corridors, and it runs off as they approach. Karlach senses something infernal as she approaches the displacer beast. She knows a devil is nearby, so she goes in alone to spare her friends the danger. When she enters the room, she encounters Yurgir in Orthon waiting in ambush, and clearly the thing Raphael warned them about. Yurgir smells the infernal engine in Karlach's heart, and Karlach is curious if this guy knows anything that can help her. But before she can get any answers, Yurgir smells the presence of Raphael, and the topic immediately changes to him. Karlach is no friend of Raphael's, so she decides to parley with this guy instead. She learns that Raphael forced Yurgir into a contract and sealed it with a song. The song left a secret loophole that prevented Yurgir from getting out of it. After convincing Yurgir to let her search for a solution, he skeptically lets her go with a threat of death if she fails. Also, one of the Maragons weirdly falls from the top level and hurts itself for no reason. So Karlach gathers her team and heads out one last time into the gauntlet. Some suspicious rats have been threatening her this whole time, and she suspects they're connected to this. Following the flood of rats down the halls, they lead everyone to the foot of the statue of Shar, where a whole menagerie of rats are gathered. Well, rats aren't particularly good at getting past damaging floor effects, so they all pop a spike growth down in the pit and let the battles begin. Most of the rats are killed instantly as soon as they spawn in, but some find some holes that let them get up above, and so those ones get the indignity of being tossed back down into the hole. After killing what seems like 100 rats, finally the last one shows up and transforms into a human, a Dark Justiciar named Lurthindor. And this fight was weird. Lurthindor was trapped in between worlds, like he was stuck out of phase with reality. It was like an episode of Star Trek or something. In the moments he was in phase with our reality, the team could give him a little smack, but all the phasing in and out made it impossible to enter submenus on the hotbar for some reason, so magic was a no-go. It took a long time, many standard attacks and attempts to shove, but finally Lae'zel lands a shove that knocks Lurthindor off the edge and into the spikes below. Fatality. Though his body transported back up top, so that's convenient, I guess. With the last Dark Justiciar dead, Karlach returns to Yurgir and hears that the contract has ended. He can no longer hear the song. But Raphael appears to rain on his parade, saying he was actually in breach of contract, since the rule was he himself had to kill all the Dark Justiciars, so the last one didn't count. Yurgir is royally pissed off, but trapped in a corner, he agrees to Raphael's terms for a new contract and goes off to the House of Hope. Now free to pick up the last orb on the ground, the team have finally finished all the tasks in the gauntlet and head down to open the lock. Putting all the orbs in place and riding an elevator down, Shadowheart approaches the point of no return, the entrance to the Shadowfell. Shadowheart takes a moment to pray to Shar before entering, and they all go inside, with an ominous warning that the state of the game will change after this choice. Good thing we did basically everything that can be done. The only quest that failed is the one with the dowry in Walking's Rest, and full disclosure, I only didn't finish that because every single member of the party failed their perception check, so the dowry was impossible to get anyway. Oh well. Balthazar came to gloat as the team entered the Shadowfell. He followed them down, letting them clear the way. Karlach has no intention of letting this guy live, but he floats away, sure of his victory should they get into a fight. Shadowheart leads the party down deep into the Shadowfell, jumping from ledge to ledge and approaching a large island at the bottom. When they get to the bottom, the team makes some preparations, summoning allies, going into Wild Shape, getting into position, and when they go down to start the conversation with Balthazar, he immediately goes hostile, because Karlach is an owlbear. No diplomacy, it seems. Balthazar is a powerful magic user, but even he is easily overwhelmed by a puddle of water and some lightning. Hilariously, he also took like over half his max HP and damage from Psionic Backlash, which I've never seen it do that much before. As far as I can tell, he isn't weak to psychic damage, so not sure why it was so strong, but big ouch for Big Balfi. He is finally finished off by an ice storm, which also takes many of his skeleton minions with him. The remaining enemies are no match for the powerful magic and bear claws they are up against, so it is just a matter of time before the battle is won. After the battle, Shadowheart speaks to the Aasimar chained up on the island and discovers this is the so-called Night Song they have been hearing so much about. And it is her sworn duty as a Sharan to slay the Night Song in order to become a Dark Justiciar. But she is conflicted. The Night Song indicates that she knows about Shadowheart and who she really is. That and all the little things over the course of the journey create a hesitation in Shadowheart, and ultimately she tosses the spear away without even a persuasion check. Freeing the Night Song from her bonds, the path is now set. Shadowheart has left the embrace of Shar forever and become a pariah in the process. Night Song flies off with her restored divine power and alerts everybody outside that the time to fight is nigh. Now, the team must rally at Moonrise Towers and finally put Ketheric Thorm to rest. The towers are a scene of chaos and death as flaming fists, harpers, cultists, and undead are strewn about near burning patches of holy fire. Jaheira is waiting outside to greet them, and they confirm the plan: storm the front gate and take control of the first floor of the tower. And so another massive battle begins, with 20 or more combatants on either side. Shadowheart tries to open up with some water, but Zarel is ready with a counterspell. Well, one haste potion later, and Shadowheart tries again, this time uninterrupted. Lae'zel then follows up as usual with a giant ice storm, dealing a ton of damage to the forces on the ground, as well as creating a giant ice surface. And this is where the comedy of errors begins. Basically every turn, someone tries to move or jump or take an action, and they slippy fall down. This continues for quite some time, with so many lost turns due to slipping on the ice, but eventually the party and their allies defeat all the cultists. Some Harpers died in the battle, but Jaheira survives and swears to hold the fort on this floor while Karlach and co go upstairs to defeat Ketheric. And so they do, and do battle on the roof against Ketheric and an army of skelemen. Karlach makes no attempt to talk down Ketheric. She's ready to brawl and take this guy down. When the battle starts, Lae'zel activates the Shriek from her sword to increase damage output for everybody else. Then she runs forward to catch as many targets in range as she can. Karlach smushes some skellies, then runs up to take on the big man himself. She gets a few smacks, then Shadowheart jumps up to get some hits in herself, successfully shredding his armor a bit. Summons focus on the other targets in the battle, then Aelin flies in and lobs some smites at Ketheric. She does so much damage with one hit, thanks to the Shriek from Lae'zel, that Ketheric immediately retreats. But he takes Aelin with him using a colossal tentacle from the depths of the tower. Cleanup is no big deal once Ketheric is gone, so they slowly but surely wipe out all the skeletons with no issue. Jaheira comes up and has a chat, and Karlach considered taking a quick long rest before going down the hole, but decides to risk it. They jump down the stinky gooey shaft and enter the next area, the Mind Flayer colony. Down here, the halls are filled with intellect devourers, which are easy pickings for our team. They give an inordinately high amount of XP for something so easy, and including the room full of them with the bugbear Chop, it gets the team to level 10. They free a strangely familiar intellect devourer from a cage. It is the same one they fought with on the Nautiloid. Now with us back in the party, Lae'zel adds it to her summon roster. Level 10. The biggest thing here is improved Wild Strike, which is basically triple attack for wild shapes. There are also new cantrips and spells here. Karlach and Shadowheart take Thorn Whip and Lae'zel Guidance. For spells, Karlach takes Wall of Fire, Lae'zel Create Water, and Shadowheart Contagion. And finally, at level 10, Lae'zel finally gets a new wild shape form, the Dilophosaurus. Compared to the Raven, this thing has a serious lack of mobility, but the damage increase is substantial, as it does acid damage on every attack. Now Lae'zel has some real damage potential going into the next big battle, a room full of undead monsters. This room was pretty tough, actually. There are so many targets that it is difficult to keep them all under wraps, and many of them deal high damage. The zombies have additional necrotic damage on all of their attacks, for example. The The highest priority target to kill first is the Death Shepherd in the center, as it can revive other undead around the room to drag the battle out longer. After that, the Winged Horrors are the scariest, as they can paralyze with their attacks, which results in several lost turns and dead summons. But in the end, the impressive AoE damage from Karlach and high single target damage from Shadowheart and Lae'zel get the job done. After the battle, Shadowheart does the weird mind puzzle and picks up the Pickled Brain reward, then uses it to get the effect Githzerai Mind Barrier by sticking it in a bald elf head. Wandering the halls, the team take down all the encounters in the place with little issue, including a party of Myrkul worshippers, tons of intellect devourers, and a group of mind flayers that were in some pods. After defeating the mind flayers, they speak to Zevlor and hear what really happened with him in the Shadowlands. He goes on his way, and everybody gathers up at the end to prepare for the final battle. Conveniently, one of the restoration pods from the Nautiloid is around that gives a free long rest. When they open the door to the innermost chamber, they witness Ketheric communing with his accomplices, one of which is someone Karlach recognizes, Gortash, the man who sold her to Zariel and caused her to suffer for a decade in Avernus. Gortash and the very sickly-looking lady with him discuss their evil plans with Ketheric, which turns out involves keeping an Elder Brain under mind control with magic rocks. They run off with the Elder Brain, beginning the march of the Absolute's armies toward the city of Baldur's Gate, but Ketheric stays behind. His job is still to kill Karlach and take away the artifact that she is carrying, so Karlach goes straight in with no fear. This is going to be fun. Ketheric in the Mind Flayer colony is what we call in the honor mode business a run killer. The biggest reason is that unlike many other battles in this game, you cannot escape if things start going wrong. This room is sealed as soon as you enter, so you either win or you get game over and your save file is lost. However, I was not at all worried about this one, because unlike many other runs I've had in honor mode, I knew that a party of druids were uniquely qualified to win this battle. Let me explain how. First phase is mostly cleanup of all the ads in the room, with the Mind Flayer being highest priority, as well as freeing Aelin from her soul cage. Typically, getting to Aelin and freeing her is Scratch's job, as he is the only summon that can use the help command, but the Mind Flayer takes him right out. With Scratch out of commission, one of the main party would have to do it, so freeing her is put down in priority until the rest of the ads are dead. Once everything else in the room is dead, everybody gathers up around Ketheric and deal what little damage they can to whittle him down. He has pretty high AC, so there are a lot of missed turns, and when he goes off with attacks, he can take someone out of Wild Shape in one turn. But that's just fine. Wild Shape will not be necessary in the next phase anyway. Somehow, Us is the one that manages to get the final hit that pushes Ketheric to his next form with a critical synaptic discharge. Ketheric refuses to go down quietly and surrenders his body to his god Myrkul, then comes back as an enormous skeleton. This is where the fun begins. The Apostle of Myrkul shares initiative with Ketheric from the previous phase, so his first turn is actually after everybody else's. Aelin comes in and does a pretty hefty smite on him, once again backed up by Shriek from Lae'zel. Shadowheart then lays down a moonbeam, followed by a wall of fire from Lae'zel. Karlach gets a couple attacks in owlbear form before she dismisses Wild Shape. Then she uses a haste potion so she can lay down a wall of fire as well, though looking at the damage log it may not have been effective. Probably multiple instances of Wall of Fire don't stack. When Myrkul gets his turn, he swings his scythe at the Dryad Summon. Good choice, guy. She was really threatening you. It should be noted that all these stacked up area effect spells deal damage to Myrkul every turn, which is draining his HP very quickly. On the next turn, Karlach adjusts from using Wall of Fire to using Moonbeam, and even uses an extra action to relocate it, double dipping on damage. Many of the summons still alive are busy cleaning up necromites before they can spawn by smacking their little pods on the ground. Lae'zel uses an ice storm, the result of which is that now Myrkul is sitting at around 100 HP remaining. Aelin gets some damage in, and once more the team gets to act. Karlach pulls the same maneuver again, double dipping her moonbeam on Myrkul, then Lae'zel drops one more ice storm. Now, Myrkul is at just around 50 HP, and once his turn begins, he gets hit down to 19 from the residual damage effects. This is low enough that Aelin can fly in and finish him off, after he wastes his turn smacking us instead of someone that matters. Ketheric is now well and truly defeated. Aelin uses a classic Mortal Kombat style head-smashing fatality on him. I bet she will be DLC in the next season pass. Karlach thinks about what she has just learned. Gortash is involved in this plot, and he is a worshipper of the evil god Bane. Karlach isn't about to let him live after all the suffering she went through at his hands. She fumes, but then she calms herself so she can get out of here. Then the dream visitor comes out of the astral prism somehow, and explains that the glowy stone in his armor is what allows him to control the brain. So now the team have some MacGuffins to look for in Act 3. Finally, some real direction. Up in the towers, several characters have gathered to congratulate the team on their victory. First up is Withers, who is cryptic as usual, but seems to know a lot about the 3 gods the bad guys are worshipping. Next is Jaheira, who offers to join the party. Karlach lets her head to camp for now. Aelin is nearby, who is hanging out with Moon Cleric Isabel. It turns out, Isabel is actually Ketheric's estranged daughter, and Aelin is her lover. So that was a weird family reunion, I guess. Karlach also checked in with Halsin, who confirms the curse is finally coming to an end. Then, she spoke to Alfira and the Tiefling kids, who are still worried about Maul, but no sign of where she got off to yet. And finally, Barkus and Wulbren, setting the stage for some gnomish activities in the city. The team leave the towers and head to camp, where Shadowheart finally speaks to Aelin about her past. She learns she was a Selenite, whose parents were attacked and kidnapped by Sharans before being taken in to be brainwashed. Her parents are still alive, presumably held prisoner in the Sharan Conclave in Baldur's Gate. Shadowheart now feels galvanized about what she needs to do next, find her parents and get her revenge. And Karlach is going to support her every step of the way. Finally, the team depart the shadow-cursed lands, cursed no more, as the land begins to heal itself as dawn breaks. Whew, this was a long one. I made a grave miscalculation when I cut off the Act 1 video before doing the Creche, assuming it would make the Act 1 and 2 videos about the same length. I was very, very wrong. This video ended up much longer than I would have expected, and definitely in part because Ethel and the Creche were pushed. Sorry about that, I guess. I appreciate you watching this series, and I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am making it. This is one of the more fun runs I've had of BG3. Themed parties are always fun, but wild shapes are particularly entertaining. I never get bored of crushing groups of weak enemies with Karlach. Act 3 will be coming soon with a thrilling finale, and maybe a few surprises along the way. See you then!